Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing. And today, we've definitely got a very interesting combination out here to test. And it's one that a couple of you guys wanted to see what would happen with. And it's kind of a bunch of polar opposites getting put together. So I'm definitely curious to see what we can get out of it too. Because there's a chance that this could kind of be the ultimate coyote fox type of load. Or it could absolutely ruin the entire pattern for us at the same time. It could absolutely go either which way with this one. But as for the shell I've got here today, I brought out some more of the Federal Shorty Shotshells. These ones are the 12 gauge, 1 3/4 inch, 15 pellet load of 4 buck, moving about 1200 feet per second. And we've done quite a bit of testing with these now, and they don't seem to be terrible shells, especially for being kind of a little bit of a gimmicky shorty shell. They've got a pretty decent velocity behind them, they pattern pretty decent, and overall, they have been pretty solid performers. And if you have not seen, here's what one of those little tiny shells looks like. As you can see, it's only a 1 3/4 inch shell. Very, very short and stubby here. It is a buffered load, so that definitely helps big time with the patterns and stuff like that. So a very interesting little shell. But what can they do through today's setup and choke combo? That's going to be the big question. And as for the setup we've got out here today, I brought out this guy. This is my Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag, but I threw in this choke, which is a Kicks Gobblin Thunder 680 constriction turkey choke. Now this is a very interesting setup for a couple reasons. Number one, if you have not seen it, this Kicks Gobblin Thunder did very well last week with a Winchester load of 4 buck. Even though it's a turkey choke, this 680 constriction seems to do very well with these little bit smaller buckshot pellets. So in general with 4 buck, we should see a decent pattern with this choke, but these 835s are overboard to a 10 gauge bore size. So how is that going to affect those little shorty shells with the tiny little wad and stuff they have in there? Plus, with them being a 1 3/4 inch shell and this having a 3.5 inch chamber, those shells are going to have to jump twice their actual length to even get to the actual bore of this shotgun. So is that going to affect it? I don't know. It's definitely a case of about as small as we can get put together with about as big as we can get at the same time. So is it going to work? Is it not? It's definitely going to be pretty interesting to see what happens. But as for the test today, we're going to run it the same as we always do with buckshot. I've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards, and I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of the shell, as well as a few templates that we can lay up over our results so we can get a better reference point as to how they did in some real life scenarios. So enough talking, let's head over here and take this shot and just see what we're able to get out of these shorty little 4 buck shells through this 835 and Kicks 680. Okay, so that shell gave us 1297 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1200, so we're moving a little bit quicker than what I would have expected to see. But we've also seen that sometimes that overbore in that 835 can play with our velocity plus or minus a little bit, depending on the shell as well. And from what I can remember, these shells are pretty much right at their claim, usually. So I definitely think they sped up just a little bit out of this 835 today. Either way, we've got plenty enough velocity, but what kind of a pattern did we actually get down at 40 yards? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And I gotta say, that is pretty impressive for a shorty shell at 40 yards. Now, I do think the main majority of our pattern did favor a little bit low, obviously. We did have a pretty condensed majority of the pattern here, but we definitely had one flyer up there at the top. And counting these pellets on the paper here, unless we somehow or another managed to get 2 pellets in the exact same hole, which I triple checked all of those holes, and it does not look like we had a double pellet strike. We only have 14 out of the 15 pellets in the shell that actually hit the paper. I don't know where the other flyer went. Either way, we had 14 pellets on the paper. And if we measure the largest 2 points across, which is from the very bottom pellet to that top flyer, it gave us 17 1/4 inches. But we had a 14-inch spread for our main majority area of the pattern. So that isn't terrible whatsoever. For a shorty shell, I'll take that all day long. That would be a predator's worst nightmare. Having 13 or 14 pellets worth of number 4 buck at almost 1300 feet per second flying down range at them, that's gonna work regardless of if it's in a short shell or not. So I gotta say, I'm rather impressed. So looking very solid here on just a plain piece of paper, but let's throw a couple of templates up here real quick and see kind of how it would have looked in a more real life type of scenario. Okay, so here's our 10-inch circle, and if we line it up with the actual central core part of our pattern here, we had a total of 9 pellets within a 10-inch circle. That ain't too bad right there, especially when you only have 15 of them in a shorty shell, and 10-inch circle is gonna be the vital size on just about anything you would ever use it for. 9 pellets of 4 buck is not gonna feel very good. So our core area, I would say, is looking very nice. Definitely no real complaints on that one. But let's throw the hog template up here and see what it would look like if you were to use these in a more hunting type of scenario. I figured we'll use the hog template because although you might use these on a hog, these are more likely a predator load for most people if they were to use these hunting, and that hog template gives us a little bit better of a size reference, or at least a closer reference to something like a larger coyote. So let's throw that template up and see what it actually looks like. Okay, and here's that hog template, and I did go ahead and just scoot it down a little bit as compared to our point of aim because we did clearly favor low on the target. Either way, we had 13 out of the 15 pellets that would have been within a hog-sized animal at 40 yards, and clearly, if you wanted to use these for a hog, they would be plenty good enough. Regardless of them being a shorty shell, it is still a load of number 4 buck, moving at almost 1,300 feet per second. That's gonna do the job. Either way here, we can see that a fox or a coyote would be just a touch smaller than this hog template, and it would absolutely be a nasty load for them as well, which I think is really where this combination would shine. They're quieter, they're far less recoil, they're really not super expensive, and that kind of a pattern, if you had an 835 and a Kicks 680, you would easily have a 50-yard coyote load all day long with that, and not have to deal with a ton of noise and recoil either. So overall here, at the end of the day, I don't think we can complain too much about that kind of a pattern. That would get it done any day of the week. Okay, and here's the wad out of that shell, and as you can see, it is one of these kind of short half-length wads. As you can see, there's my thumb width, and it's like 1.5 of my thumbs, so definitely very small and short compared to a normal wad. But this was one of the things I was worried about going through that 835, making the jump from the chamber to the bore and being overboard and going through a ported Kicks choke. I really didn't know how it was going to play with this short wad, but it seems to have done just fine. Now, we did have a couple flyers, but chances are those were probably the ones that sat on top and weren't really super controlled by it either, so there's always that possibility. Either way, the wad itself looks very much normal for what we typically see out of these. Definitely nothing special to take note of, and clearly I think it did about as good as what it could have done with today's setup combination. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that performance right there? I'd say that looks pretty good for a shorty shell, because at the end of the day here, those shorty shells were really probably not designed to do this kind of stuff. They are right on that edge of being kind of a ranged toy, gimmicky round, while having a little bit of practical use with fitting more in the actual magazine tube. But clearly, if you wanted to have a high capacity of shells with not much recoil and a little bit of noise reduction and stuff like that for coyote hunting or something, yeah, that would absolutely do it right there. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested this combination or the Federal Shorty shells or anything like that? And would you hunt with a pattern like that? And maybe is there another choke or setup combo that you want to see those run through? Let me know all that down below. But I definitely don't think we can complain too much about that kind of a result for today. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.